Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Studio Insights, a podcast brought to you by Provost Studio. I'm your host today, Tyler Kern. Thanks so much for joining us here for another episode of the program. Today, we're talking about using video to communicate your brand, but more importantly, we're going to talk about brand awareness. We're going to talk a little bit about creating a vision for a company and what that looks like. And we're thrilled to be joined today once again by Peter Provost, Director of Design at Provost Studio. Peter, welcome to another episode. Thanks for joining me, man.
Hey there. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Of course, and we're also joined today by Michael Bustin. He is the Global Chief Growth Officer at Durasein. Michael, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a mouthful, isn't it? That title.
It is, but it's a pretty cool title. So, Michael, kick us off. Tell us a little bit about what that title means and what you do at Durasein.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, the title. So I handle all the global branding and marketing for Durasein. Durasein is one of the world's leading manufacturers of solid surface products and materials, but we're more than that. We're solid surface people, and we're driven every day by a purpose of helping designers do the best work of their life. My title is actually pretty interesting. When I joined the company, I was offered the opportunity to really articulate a brand and kind of wake up a sleepy category. Solid surface has been around for a little over 50 years. It was invented by DuPont, so everybody knows the name Corian. Corian solid surface is somewhat like the Kleenex of tissues. And it's become somewhat of a sleepy category, sleepy material in the respect where a lot of new age materials, engineered quartz, large format porcelain, sintered stones have taken front stage. How do the challenge was how do we grow a brand globally that resonates with our target audience, and do that in a fresh and exciting new way? My title, Global Chief Growth Officer, the growth officer aspect of what I do means that I work with basically all departments throughout our company. So as opposed to just a chief marketing officer who obviously deals with just marketing and branding for a corporation, my title allows me to dive into branding and marketing on a global level, but it also allows me to work very closely with the sales entity, the sales component of our business, the operations component of our business, the research and development, production side of our business, as well as finances. So I'm kind of a rare breed that works with all leadership in our company to grow our business internally and externally.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into strategic branding in the first place. Was this something that you were always kind of involved in, or have you kind of grown into this role and kind of found a passion for it and found a desire to do stuff like this?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I guess a little bit about my history. So I grew up in a family. My dad was a specialty contractor, so I grew up around industrial and commercial construction most of my life. I was born in New Jersey, and moved upstate New York as a kid, and went to school for, ironically, mechanical engineering and physics. But I've always had this desire for design as long as I can remember as a kid. Design, I tell people, design runs through my veins, and it's really influenced everything I've done in life. And I think a lot of that really was influenced by the '80s. You know, I was a kid of the '80s, so during the '80s, MTV was coming online, this digital revolution was happening, and everything was changing from a communication and branding standpoint, marketing standpoint. And I didn't know what was going on at the time, but it was just cool. And when I got out of school, I had a desire to be a concept car designer. And but coming from a construction family, I ended up getting into commercial construction management at a very early age as a project manager. And so I was, thrown into these projects. I was the typical, you hear about the youngster wearing a white hard hat with a clipboard. That was me. Though I think the advantage I had was that I came from a construction family. So, unlike most, when most 13-year-olds were watching cartoons and playing with their friends, my dad said to my brother and I, "Hey kids, don't make any plans for the summer. We're building your mom a house." And we built a house. So he's like, when school gets out, he's like, you're here every day. And the day after school got out that summer, we were building a house from sun up to sundown. And if you didn't want to build a house, my dad said, hey, no problem. He'd point his finger and like, you can go home, and home was 17 miles away. So it was kind of the school of hard knocks, but it was, at the time I didn't like it, but it was an incredible experience. When I went through, I had a stint. I've always had an entrepreneurial side of me. And so I was the kid who had all these kind of little odd jobs and little businesses that my dad helped me start, always trying to make a buck, always trying to be a millionaire. And as I got older and I was in construction, I got the bug and I started my own business. And I started a manufacturing business, and I started it from scratch, ended up selling it 12 years later to a big known company called Landscape Forms in the architectural world. And it was at that point where I had the opportunity to really do something different. And I thought about, do I stay in the world of architecture and building that I've been in most of my life, or do I try something radically different? And I was always influenced by the power and excited by the power of a brand, not really truly understanding what that meant. One of the buyer who acquired our business, one of the reasons, or some of the reasons they purchased our business was, one, the marketing that we did, the publicity, the public relations that we did, and the identity that we had. This look and feel that we had. And at the time, I was just doing what I thought was right, not having really the professional experience. It was at that time that I decided, you know what, I want to change my career. I'm gonna do something radically different. Take all this experience and education I have, put it aside, and I'm going to get in the world of branding and marketing in advertising. So I reached out to a gentleman that I knew. He had a creative agency here in North Carolina. They were known for brand strategy and marketing strategy first, and then creative on top of that. And I was hired as their chief business officer. So I was the guy that was out there looking for the new customers and clients, and I would bring them into the agency. Once the contract was signed, I turned them over to, I called it the machine, and then the agency would kick in and do what they want, what they needed to do. And at that time, what was really interesting was, we worked with all different types of companies, from startup to multi-billion-dollar, pharmaceutical companies. And we always had the opportunity during the initial stages of the DNA, we called it, the brand DNA. We sat down usually with leadership, if not all the leadership, the CEO and top, and certain leadership members. But then they would also invite in everybody from, people that were on the front line. It might be an office manager, just to get different perspectives, about their company. And after going through a couple dozen of these sessions over a 7-year period, I realized that, a kind of a light bulb went off, and I realized that, wow, first of all, every company, big or small, they all have the same problems. They have the same problems that I had when I had my business. And I look back at Peter and I actually, we've talked about this in the past, but you work, you work every single day, you're working hard, and you have some successes, you have some failures, your business is up and down. At the end of the day, you're looking at your bank accounts or whatever, you're saying to yourself, man, I'm working for several years, I've done all this great stuff, but I'm not successful, because most people equate success to money. And I did the same thing. And my wife, my best friend, my partner, my wife, she would always say to me, but you are successful. Look at all this great stuff you've done. And I say this to Peter, quite often. And I realized at that point, like, wow, everything I was doing within the capacity that I had, and the resources that I had at the time. And everybody else has the same problems. The other thing that I saw was the power of brand strategy, and strategy, the key word. And I think people in our industry, in business in general, use strategy in a lot of different ways. It has a lot of different meanings. But when it boils down, when it comes to when it's associated with brand, it's very different. And I think Peter could probably attest to this. Most companies think that brand is something that's been around for a long time, and or it's the pretty stuff. It's the assets, it's the logo, it's the business card, it's the website, it's your office. Those are all components of a brand. Some of them are sales related components, but when you really start to truly understand what a brand is and how a brand describes your company and how that appeals to the outside consumer or your target audience and how that resonates with them, it evokes emotion. That's when it becomes very awesome and very powerful. So that really excited me. And I started researching a lot about branding and marketing and how agencies work, and old agencies, new age agencies, the future of that. And I was sitting in the office one day and got a call from a mutual friend of our CEO, and he said, "Hey, I know this woman who has this a big international solid surface company. They're looking at doing something on the marketing side. I'm not quite sure what they're interested in. Would you be interested in? I think it'd be worth your while to meet with her." So I thought I was meeting this person to promote the marketing advertising surfaces of our company. So I'm like, sure, fine. If you're going to fly me up there, I'll definitely go up there and meet with the person. And it was one of the most interesting times of my life. And again, Peter can relate to this. I sat down the CEO. She's Chinese, and the company's based in China. And she's a very vibrant woman, very smart, very determined, very entrepreneurial, but she doesn't speak any English. And I was in this conversation, a 6-hour meeting all day, totally translated the whole conversation. And it was the first time in my life I've been involved in something like that, and it was exhausting. And I said to myself, "Wow, man, I can't imagine working for a company like this, through translation. I could never do this." Well, long story short, that day, CEO brought me back to the airport with her translator, and she said, "Nice meeting you. When are you going to come work for me?" I'm like, "No, I'm not interested in working. No. I have a job. I get paid well. I really don't work, super hard." And she's like, "Well, I'm going to call you every day until you say yes." And she did, and I finally said yes. So that's kind of how brand to me, I think, is something that was always inside of me. And I think it relates to my entrepreneurial spirit coupled with the design side of things, and also the sales side of things. I tell people that I'm more of a salesperson than I am a marketer. I'm more of a brand, I don't want to say expert, but more of a branding, obsessed with branding or branding aficionado, than marketing as well. And I think branding for a company, most people don't realize how important it is. And I think it's probably, other than the idea itself, it's probably the second most important component of a business. One of the major pillars of a business. If you nail the brand strategy, that will affect everything you do, and affect everybody that works internally as well as externally with your company.
I loved getting a chance to just hear you kind of tell us that story and talk to us more about branding and that sort of thing. And Peter, it really dovetails really nicely into some of the things that we've talked about on the show in the past, and that is that on a lot of the projects that you're working on, a lot of these studios are meant to communicate brand both internally and externally, like Michael was saying, right? And so we're really seeing that with a lot of your projects.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the observation that Michael has and had about how brands communicate themselves through look and feel, or exterior means is important, but that's not the only way that we try to translate brand. So, as an example, when we start to talk about with our clients how to express who they are and what they do, yes, it's about the logo, yes, it's about the brand colors, but really it's about kind of what is the what's the approach really to the content that we're trying to help them express, right? And so as an example, is it something that, yes, at the end of the day, the environment has to express who they are, but more importantly, like, how do they want to communicate, right? It's not just what it looks like as a space or as a room, but how are we helping them, communicate their content? And I think it's really a challenge, at least for us sometimes, to get the client to think beyond a logo, think beyond, color palettes for brand, and think about specifically like the audience and specifically the content that they're trying to present. So yeah, I mean, what's interesting, like, Michael, I'd like you to maybe chime in a little bit about what that means to you at Durasein. And it's as much about how organizations communicate internally and externally that as it is about, again, I hate to be so trite about, like, brand is not just about a logo. Brand is not just about, colors and fonts. It's more than that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's, again, there's a lot there. I think it's important, you know, this term, or this word brand. If you look up the definition of brand, you'll see all kinds of stuff out there. So all kinds of definitions, and some of the experts will say there's about 75 plus professional descriptions or definitions of brand. I define brand as your promise to your customers. So 5 words or less, it's your promise to your customers. Jeff Bezos of Amazon has a really interesting way that he defines brand, and he says it's what other people say about you when you're not in the room. So it is deeper than just.
I like that.
It's just deeper than the creative that people see. Now, from a brand strategy standpoint, Peter touched upon this a little bit, and how this relates a little bit to Durasein. When you're marketing, okay, there's a lot involved in marketing. And, we like to tell people that we strategic market, and strategic marketing is just different than going through the motions. And most people confuse sales efforts or sales support with marketing. Trade shows, having a website, having catalogs and brochures, doing social media. That's a part of marketing. It's a form of marketing. Okay. A lot of that is sales support. Okay. Catalogs, trade shows, websites are sales support. But a brand is much, much deeper. A brand is the ethos of the company. The brand is the DNA of the company. The brand, more importantly, is about the people behind the company, or the people behind the brand. It's really about people, less about product. There's an incredible video that I just reposted yesterday that's been out there for many years from Steve Jobs, and I could watch it 1,000 times. It's about a 6-7 minute clip. And he talks about branding and strategic marketing and hiring Chiat as an agency to do their campaigns. And he says, listen, we're not about product. It's more than just product. And we entered the branding phase as the same thing, where we were competing with a lot of other surfacing manufacturers that have been around for 50 plus years. All of our competitors are multi-billion-dollar companies. They're part of large corporations. LG, Samsung, which is now Lotte, Hyundai, DuPont, Dow. These are ginormous companies that have, they're $100 billion companies, and we're privately owned, and we're competing with them. So we are definitely the underdogs. We knew we couldn't outspend the competition. They had billions of dollars, and we didn't. So we had to outsmart them. So when we said we're going to start a brand, and the CEO said, I want to start a brand, I says, listen, it takes 3 things. It takes time, money, and people. And you cannot expect ROI instantaneously. It will take 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years until all the assets are created, they're in play, and people start to to realize and connect with those with those assets, with that messaging, with your purpose. Like Bezos says, when you're not in the room, they're thinking about you, they're talking about you. So at first, what we did was we hired a branding agency. We did a typical agency review. We hired an agency out of the UK. They were known for brand strategy and creative. And it's always important to have, I worked at an agency. We specialized in brand strategy and creative. Well, on the brand side, it's like, well, you might feel you have the smarts to create something like that, but it really takes an outside perspective. You really need that third party perspective. We used to say, you have to look at it from the outside in instead of the inside out. So these experts look at your business. They look at the competitive landscape. They look at the marketplace opportunities. They look at the people behind the brand, what you're all about, the SWOT analysis. And then from that, they generate the DNA of your brand or your brand attributes. For us, after this exercise that we did, it took many weeks, a few months. Everything was delivered to us. When you get a brand strategy from anybody, I don't care who it is in the world, it's delivered in a presentation, a deck. And we received a deck, and there's a lot of information in this deck. But the cool thing for us was everything was condensed. 60, 80 pages, 100 pages, and months worth of work was condensed into one visual representation. And we call it the Durasein brand Bible, or the Durasein circle. And it's literally a circle with three concentric circles. At the core of our brand, the core brand idea, as we call it, we tell people we're creatives for creatives. Okay, so the nucleus of our brand is creatives for creatives. And what that means for us in the outside world is that first we had to define a target audience. And the target audience for any business is very, very important. You cannot be everything for everyone. It's impossible. Most people, on the contrary, most people think, and a lot of designers and creatives like Peter, we've chatted about this. When you're creative, you feel like you could do anything. You feel like you have these fundamentals. You feel like you have these fundamentals in design, and you can really do anything. And everything inspires you, and everything excites you. The problem is that you're not focused, and when you're not focused, you're missing out. You're missing out on the big picture, and you're missing out on the you're trying to work in the short term as opposed to the long term. And branding is a long term game. It's not. I tell the company, listen, we're not going to win every race, but we will win the marathon. Which is why I said from the beginning, it takes time, money, and people. So the core idea of Creatives for Creatives is focused around first our primary target audience. We had to define a primary target audience. Now, our material is sold to homeowners and commercial and this and all this stuff, right? OEM, direct, blah, blah, blah. But we said, okay, based on the industry, based on the competitive landscape, okay, and based on how surfacing works and how it's specified and purchased and manipulated through fabricators, whatever, we're going to target on the architects and designers. Okay, which is nothing new. I mean, the whole world in the A&D world, manufacturers, product vendors, they focus on A&D. Okay, but when we say creatives for creatives, we looked at our manufacturing practice firm as, even though we have a lot of machines, yes, we have automated machines and robotic arms and all that, fancy technology and everything, we're still very creative. So we're not just pushing buttons and pumping out sheets of material and products, okay? We're very creative. It takes a lot of creativity to develop colorways, to look at macro, micro trends in the world, to develop color palettes, to develop visual textures, to develop the products, the ergonomics of a product, the functionality of products. So there is a lot of design that goes into it, okay? And we have a big team that concentrates on that, which is why, again, everything is driven by this idea of creatives for creatives, okay, or creativity. Out of that, the circle, the next circle, defines our brand purpose our personality, our values, and our value proposition. Okay, and one of the cool things when at the agency that I'll never forget is kind of a really interesting way to talk about a brand, or you get people to understand a brand. Okay, and there's some main components of a brand. One being positioning. Okay, another one being personality, and as I said, our brand has personality, values, and so personality, values. And if you think about brand as an individual, okay, as a person, okay, and we always, when we were talking to clients, we used to say, imagine you're going out with your buddies, okay, you're going out for a night on the town, okay, you get all dressed up, Peter's got his hair all slicked back, I got my hair all put into a shark fin, and I'm wearing what I'm wearing, Pete's got his vest on, and here we are, we open up the door, and ahead of us is a big room, right, filled with men and women. So there's a couple of young ladies at the bar, and we open up the door, the wind's blowing behind us, like we're in concert or something like that. The dry ice is blowing, and they look at us, right? Well, automatically they, the way we look when we open up that door, that's our positioning. Peter and I look different. We're dressed different. We look different. Okay, so that's how like a brand. When you see something, first it's positioning. Okay, without saying anything, we mosey up to the bar, and we start talking to people. Okay, so the person that you're talking to, is attracted to your personality. Okay, wow, this person's really nice. This person's really smart, or this person's whatever. Okay, so personality comes into play. You start dating, you're doing what you're doing, okay, and it's not until the person starts to learn about your values. Okay, what do you really stand for? That's when Cupid zaps the both of you with an arrow. You fall in love, and maybe you get married. Okay, you get married because first the way you look, second because your personality, and then because your values aligned. So it's the same thing with a brand. Okay, for us, we defined, it was very important for us to have a purpose. Okay, a brand purpose, and the reason for that is that the purpose for a brand, one, it influences the outside world, but it also influences everybody internally. Okay, if everybody in the company knows why you're going to work every day, doing what you're doing, whether it's the CEO or whether it's the person sweeping the floor, okay, it's important for them to know why they're going to work and how are they participating in this thing called a brand, which is why we defined our brand as helping designers do the best work of their life. So whether it's our CEO out there pitching the company, okay, as we built a company to help designers do the best work of their life, not to manufacture solid surface, to help designers do the best work of their life, or if it's the person sweeping the floor after the product is coming off the production line, it's sanded, it's cut, cleaning up the floors to make sure it's nice and safe. That person sweeping the floor, why? To help designers do the best work of their life. How is the floor sweeper helping designers do the best work of their life? Well, the floor sweeper is, maintaining a nice, clean, safe environment to help, the manufacturing personnel manufacture the product. So all of that builds on top of one another, and everybody's there for this defined purpose. The last two components are, personality and values. And for us, we gave this brand, a personality. And again, this was all calculated based on competitive landscape. And that personality is three words: fresh, frank, and familiar. The values, which can sometimes be core values, or we call them active values. Okay, the active values of our brand are radical empathy, try and see, on the pulse, and stay humble. All of this is built around a value proposition of, we are your creative partner. We understand what you want, and we're going to help you. We understand what designers want, and we're going to help them get it. So all of this ties together, and just these simple words then become the drivers for all of our execution, whether it's creative, whether it's developing a logo or developing a catalog or developing a video or whatever it is, okay, down to the people that we hire that are growing with the company, to make sure that they have similar values and understand who we are, what we stand for, so then they can radiate that outwards. So there's a lot there's a lot there, I know. So hopefully you have some questions, but again, I could, as you could probably tell, talk about this for days. To me, it's very exciting how just some words can really affect a company. Now, while they're just words on a paper, the hard part comes in the execution, but also for a company, it's alignment. And alignment, I've found, has been the biggest challenge in all of this. When I say alignment, it's alignment between the brand group, the marketing group, the sales group, the operations group, the finance group, to making sure that everybody just doesn't go off in their own little world and concentrate on what they're doing. Everybody has to live this, and everybody has to, they have to push this forward.
That's a whole lot you just gave us, and I'm trying to sift through it. So, all right, so let's stay with alignment, because I think alignment is one of those things that we deal with all the time. And so it's specifically around brand, right? So you may have really well developed and expressed brands across multiple channels, right? Whether it's your print, whether it's web, whether it's ad, whether it's external communications, whether it's internal communications. What we find is that this little niche of expressing brands through video that we're part of oftentimes is like not aligned with the other channels. How do you, I guess from your perspective, what advice do you give to, I don't know, whether it's our clients or theoretically, if you could give it to some of your clients with some unsolicited advice, how would you go about suggesting they look at the process of realignment, right? Whether it's through video or any other channel. How does that work, given your wealth of knowledge of branding?
Well, again, everybody, it seems like a lot of the people that are progressive in the professional world, everybody feels like they have the answers, right? And everybody wants to prove themselves, and everybody wants to stand out amongst everybody else. And what I found with strategy, and one of the reasons why we implemented a strategy, one was to define everything that we do. So every single thing we do, we execute against a strategy. And again, thinking of it like a person, okay? If there's a discussion or a debate amongst leadership, and everybody's going back and forth, I have a strong opinion. I'm gonna have my opinion. CEO's gonna have her opinion. Global sales director have his opinion, on and on. President, they're all gonna have their opinions. If we're all in debate, what I do is I end up saying, okay, let's ask brand. What does brand say? If brand says yes, then it's a definitive yes. If brand says no, it's against brand. End of topic. We're not going to do it because everybody else is doing it. So the strategy becomes a rule book. Okay,
yeah,
it becomes a
guardrails on the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It becomes a very, very powerful tool, amongst all of this. And from a brand perspective, I feel a brand manager, a chief brand officer should be part of the leadership group at all times, because you have to always question, is it on brand? Is it on brand? Because again, we've all seen it. Sales and marketing, they butt heads for many, many, many years. They always will, because they think differently. When people are aligned, and I'm not saying that brands, everything has to be brand, but you have to really truly understand, what does that mean to that individual and to the customer, and from an alignment standpoint, I found that's one of the most challenging things, the challenging things to do from a communication standpoint. Again, whether it's collateral, whether it's video, whether it's digital, whether it's an interior space. Again, I think the important thing to do, and this is why I love what you do, Peter, is really, again, execute on, brand. So what does that really mean? So for us, let's say, okay, if our brand, the attributes of our brand, the personality and the values, okay, and the core are created for creatives. Well, if you're building out a space, and if I could, I'll have to share pictures with you after the podcast. If you see, if you're a creative entity and you're about fresh and frank and familiar and try and see and on the pulse, I'm not going to get into what those things mean, but your space alone should illustrate and exude these principles and these values. Okay, your space should be fresh, whatever your definition of fresh is.
However, right? Yeah, that becomes that
absolutely.
becomes really like a way of approaching the beginning of the design process.
Absolutely. If your brand's about being on the pulse, meaning you're in tune with what's going on now and in the future, you need to exude that, show that in your space. If your space is about creativity, then just having a cool looking space, okay, might be creative looking, but how do you incorporate creativity in your space? Maybe you have a creative lab or a skunk works, or maybe there's something going on where you're constantly experimenting to show the creativity, to inspire your employees, but also when customers or clients are walking through your space, they're like, wow, you guys are about creativity. So, it's really, again, I cannot stress enough the power of a really good articulated brand strategy. We started. I just posted something yesterday. We started 3.5 years ago. I started 3.5 years ago, and was brought into Durasein, and from a marketing, branding, promotional asset perspective, we had very, very, very little to almost nothing. We had a website. We had an industrial sample box we had a couple pieces of collateral, and that was it. We went through this whole process. Okay. 3 years later, it's been about 2.5 years since activation from all of our new assets. Things are exploding. Okay. And it's because we executed on strategy day after day after day. We were very consistent. Consistency is key. You have to execute consistently, and you have to execute frequently. If you do that, even though it might seem like it's a broken record, and you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, it's a long race. You have to get the word out. People have to live, eat, and breathe. Their emotions need to be affected by what you do. So so when they buy once, they buy again, or you're on top of their mind when you're not in the room and they're telling others about you. That's what brand is all about.
Love that.
Michael, you mentioned earlier that I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but you said brand is, it boils down to people, right? And people have to embody that brand for your company to actually exude it, right? You can have all the words and you can have the deck and the booklet and all that sort of stuff, but if your people aren't embodying that, then really it's not true of your company, right? So how has it been more challenging over the last couple of years to align on brand, just with all of the different things that have taken place, that have kind of taken people to different places, and hybrid work, remote work, all these different kind of conversations? Has that made brand more challenging in terms of aligning on some of these things in your mind? What have you seen as far as that goes?
Absolutely, 100%. When we started this thing, again, we're the brand group, and personally, I'm extremely passionate about brand. Getting everybody else in an organization as excited as I am or my team has been the hardest. That in alignment of all the different departments has been the hardest thing to do, and I believe will continue. For us, the reason is several fold. One, we're in a very the materials manufacturing in the architectural design world is still very, I don't want to say archaic, but kind of old school thinking, right? The way you go to market, what you do, how you do things is still driven by kind of the old ways. Even if equipment and technology has advanced, it's still the whole process, the whole sales cycle, the supply chain, the whole thing is still a little archaic. It's getting better, but archaic. And so because of that, the thinking is different. For us, we have in our organization, what makes it super tough is one, we have kind of old school thinking, and which exists with a good part of our group that have been in the industry for quite a while. And what makes things really challenging for us, because we started this idea of a brand in the United States. So we created this little monster United States, and we we nurtured this little baby along, and now we're sharing it with the rest of the world. Well, the problem with that is that things change from country to country and culture to culture, and that makes it very, very difficult. How we work in the United States and how we do business and how things are done, say, in Europe, and how things are done in Asia are radically different. So not only are means of doing business radically different, but then as well interpretation, because we have these words on a piece of paper. Our key messaging, which is something I didn't talk about. Key messaging is something that you're constantly communicating with your target audience. Our key messaging is helping creativity flow. So everything that we do, we try to help creativity flow. If we can help creativity flow in a designer like Peter, okay, because he's bogged down with all the daily grind and all the nuances that affect him from doing what he loves to do, i.e. designing. If we can help creativity flow, he will be able to do the best work of his life. So so we're consistent in that messaging. When you then translate that messaging in other languages, sometimes they don't have even the words. So now you have to start manipulating the words, and things get a little twisted. So then you have to like transcreate things, transform and recreate things to still maintain the essence of the brand, but do it in a culture, in a language that could be radically different. And so working with the globe in these different countries, including Asia, has been the most challenging thing. And Peter, I'm sure, could attest to this, has been the most challenging thing I've ever done in my career. But super grateful of the experience, because if we could break through this difficulty, and we could unite everybody and get everybody to think the same, then I would have achieved, the greatest accomplishment. But it has been truly hard to get everybody to rally, against a brand. We have several presentations throughout the year. People sit in like you said, they watch a deck. We might have T-shirts and hats and everything, but it's really deeper than that. And it's some people truly understand it and get it, how it could really help them in their position and what they do. And then others, I think, just look at it as words and like, well, the marketing guys, there they are getting some crazy stuff they're doing. Like, woo, look at that crazy picture. And, so it has been challenging. And I think it takes, it does take leadership. It does take an organization. It takes leadership to believe, first and foremost. The leaders have to believe, and then the leaders have to energize their teams to believe. And it's a constant, reinforcement of the brand values and attributes. And it's something like we just rebuilt we've been working on our headquarters in China. And they've tried to, yes, we have big logos on the walls and maybe taglines and stuff like that. And that's all cool and everything. But, it is much, much deeper than that. And that's been our biggest challenge, is how do we get people, when they talk about it, they get like almost emotional and worked up about it. And that, I don't have the answer for that. But I know companies spend, many, many, many millions on trying to get their people to rally around their brand, which in hopes they become ambassadors and then excite those on the outside world.
I think one of the things that you mentioned about translating brands globally or cross-culturally was really interesting, because that's something that, the good news about that as an observation and as a challenge is that, at least what I've found, is that design, just like maybe other arts, whether it's music or film, tends to like transcend culture, which is really cool, because at the end of the day, we do work in China as well, and we've done other work even in Europe, Georgia, Republic of Georgia, Nigeria, and all of these places couldn't be different culturally. But what's really interesting is, at least with the clients that we work with, is like there's this understanding or recognition of like what is good design versus great design, or bad design versus great design, regardless of what culture you're in. And generally, I mean, at least the clients that we try to work with really recognize that, right? They may not know how to get there. They may not know what the process is that will lead them to something that is inherently their brand, but they understand what good is. And I think that's where, whether it's an external client or whether for you guys it's potentially an internal challenge, because you've got different parts of the company and on different parts of the globe, it's definitely something that is there, which is great. Which is like, for me, it's super rewarding.
That's very. I love that, and you're so right. And I usually say it in different words, but I agree with you. People will always, regardless of culture, of language, people always pick great design. You put two toothbrushes next to one another. If one is beautiful, whatever that means, okay, ergonomically correct, it feels good, it looks good, people are always going to pick the beautiful object. So you're very right. Like it's this, design is this unspoken language where people do gravitate to great creativity and great design, which, you're right, has made things easier, because you could always talk about the height of a seat, because people are taller or smaller or this or that, or but really great design, you said it perfectly, great design really does transcend and always wins, and I found that to be the same in our world as well.
Awesome.
Well, guys, we are short on time, I believe, here, as this conversation has just been really, really fantastic, and I've loved every second of it. Michael, you want to give us just any final thoughts, anything you want to leave listeners and viewers with here of this episode of the podcast? Obviously, we've covered a ton of ground, just talking brand and brand strategy and what that looks like and what that means. But any just final words of advice or words of encouragement or anything along those lines?
Yeah, no, I think, I think to emphasize the importance of brand strategy in business as a whole. Branding is not just a component of the marketing department. Branding is something that can infiltrate entire organization internally and externally. And just know that building brand does take time, does take money, and it does take people. And know that ROI on brand is very, very hard to calculate. Digital campaigns are easy to calculate. You look at the numbers, the analytics, pay per click, what's the residual? Here, it takes time. It takes a lot of work, a lot of energy, a lot of punches, but in the end, it is worth it. And you are running a marathon and not just a race. So just the importance of brand and how that can affect your entire business now and in the future, I think is very, very important.
Excellent stuff. Michael Bustin, Global Chief Growth Officer at Durasein. I got it a little bit cleaner that time. Michael, thank you so much again for joining us here on the podcast. And man, giving us just a lot of incredible stuff to think about. Very cool. It's been a great time. I appreciate it, guys. Absolutely. And Peter Provost, Director of Design at Provost Studio. Peter, thanks for being here as well, man.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it.
You betcha. No problem. Anytime.